Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to today's morning blast. It is Tuesday, the 29th of April, all day. As usual, you join myself, Mr. Ryan Paisley, with the uh, irreplaceable, fantastic, wonderful, glamorous Mr. Michael
Oh,
Brown, as we jumpstart your trading day with an explosive daily market preview. Obviously, this is recorded live, so all of us will try not to swear and say things like shit, fuck, or bugger. But before we carry on, I will get the legals out the way. As usual, nothing discussed in this spaces session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by myself, Brian Paisley, Mr. Michael Brown, or indeed PIQ. Good morrow, my friend. How are you?
hi, good morning to you, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, not too bad, actually. Thank you, mate. It's
Well,
another
even though
lovely day in the square mile.
even though you've just read the latest from the ONS saying that the data is even more fucked up than it was before.
Oh, I mean, yeah, when will it ever end with that lot? If you ask the Welsh to do something, it's never going to end well, is it?
I'd like to apologise to all of our Yaki Dar listeners over there.
And any sheep who may be listening and are
Wow,
offended by
wow,
our
wow, wow, yeah, yeah.
remarks.
So, what these words are purely Michael's from a personal standpoint, nothing to do with PIQ. Um, Big ups to the Welsh contingent.
Is
Moving
PIQ
on,
big in Wales?
mate. I'm big everywhere.
Oh,
Whee!
God.
Right, quickly move on. Quick, quick.
Fuck's sake. Yes, let's. Jesus. Oh God, it's
Oh
always
god.
it's Tuesday morning and it's already just descended, hasn't it? Fuck me. Right, I'll actually keep these relatively short and sweet this morning because, dare I say, it was a bit of a dull start to the week yesterday. The S&P and Nasdaq both ended the day pretty much where they started it. We did see some intraday declines. Both were down about 1% intraday. The S&P bouncing nicely off the 5,500 handle, which I'm sure will get all the technical analysis folk with their crayons very, very excited indeed.
Indeed.
But ultimately, it was a bit of a directionless chop fest across financial markets. Of course, we have a few bits and bobs in the mix. Very much the calm before the storm with all of the risk events on the horizon, including earnings from four at a magnificent seven, plus, of course, the non-farm payrolls numbers on Friday, GDP on Wednesday, etc., etc., etc. It is also month end, which does tend to make things rather murky as well. And I think we saw the impact of some of the month end flows coming through in the foreign exchange market yesterday, with the dollar broadly softer against most peers, particularly into the London fixing at 4 o'clock, where we saw cable trade north of 134 to its best level since 2022, and we also saw the euro reclaim the 114 figure. In terms of markets elsewhere, gold a little bit firmer, crude a little bit
Gold.
soft. Oh dear.
Sorry.
Oh, Ryan,
I can't you can't say gold without me breaking into song. Sorry. I apologize. Sorry.
terrible, terrible. Um,
Always believe in your song. I've had far too many fucking coffees this morning, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
I can tell. And crude down by about 2%, trading below $62 a barrel. That came after comments from the US Energy Secretary, Mr. Wright, whose first name I have forgotten, but I haven't forgotten that he was saying that the US are in the process right now of refilling the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
Do you know
In
what?
terms,
Just quickly
oh,
on
God,
this. I did hear something yesterday. I've not looked into it, so it might be bullshit. But the person that posted it is normally quite reliable. There was some chatter going around yesterday that the speed at which the Biden administration withdrew stocks from this SPR, which are basically salt caverns, has actually damaged the caverns that the oil was being stored in. So they're having to actually kind of um, refurbish these caverns before they can fill them back to any large degree, and some of them might be out of order for a little while. But there are lots of them dotted around. It's not just like one big hole in the ground. But yeah, it's just something to keep an eye on, I guess. There you go.
sounds quite serious. It would be inappropriate for me to make a crude pun about that, really. So I think
Oh
we will move on. In terms,
God. Oh,
In terms of fundamental catalysts yesterday, there really weren't many, to be completely honest with you. We did have Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He was talking on CNBC, saying that it is up to China to de escalate trade tensions. He's sure that China wants to do that. We've then heard from the Chinese side this morning with yet another round of what is now incredibly familiar rhetoric, saying that the trade war was launched by the United States and that if the US wants to talk, then it should do so. It should seek dialogue, and that dialogue should take place on the basis of mutual respect. Anyone else bored of these comments yet? Because we seem to hear
yep.
them every single day. Bessent was also in this CNBC interview reiterating that the US has a strong dollar policy, and he said that we will see the ECB cutting rates in order to, quote, get the euro back down. Not sure that one will have gone down particularly well in Frankfurt. Of course, we did have the usual round of sources reports on the trade front yesterday, both of these coming via Fox Business. The first is that apparently these trade deals, according to two senior administration sources, are taking longer than expected as a result of the Trump administration working on larger trade deals that are not just about lowering tariffs, but, quote, great broad deals. I'll leave you to decide whatever that means. We also heard from further from Fox Business yesterday. This from Charlie Gasparino. He was talking about the hold-up in the Japan trade deal that apparently stems from a disagreement over the level of commitment that Japan will be buying from oil pipelines in Alaska. Again, as we've, well, certainly Ryan has mentioned on numerous occasions previously, one of the easiest and quickest ways to reduce your trade deficit is just to go and buy a shed load of commodities from the United States, whether that
Yep.
be oil, whether that be LNG, and that is indeed what we are seeing. In terms of other bits and bobs from
Sorry,
yesterday on the
just
date,
just before
all
you
gone.
just before we move on. So no, again, obviously you mentioned about Japan might be slightly delaying the trade talk. Obviously South Korea as well, because rightly so. So obviously, for those who can remember, South Korea's ex-leader basically tried to enforce martial law because I think someone said it was because he was lonely. So it's been absolute upheaval
Oh,
in South Korea, and rightly you can't really blame them. They've turned around and said, do you know what? Don't expect any deal for us to make any agreements until the new government is in power, because they're not in a position to make these massive, substantial obligations or agreements to obligations if they haven't got a government running to sort it out. So all this kind of talk beforehand, from the US saying, oh, South Korea, they're about to sign, and we're really close. We're looking June, possibly July before we get anything from South Korea. And you can't really hold it against them. I think it'd be really unfair to try and force South Korea to kind of sign up and agree to anything when whoever's making these decisions, chances are they're not going to be in power in a couple of months' time.
no, absolutely. But it's going to be a big, beautiful deal. It's going to be the best deal that the
Oh,
world has
best deal
ever
ever.
seen,
Best deal
and
ever.
it's 90% done, as
Oh,
those who were trading
and
markets back in 2018 will know.
memories from the corner of my eye.
Oh God! Right. While you do your karaoke, I'll cover off yesterday's data. We did have a relatively light data slate, but we did have manufacturing figures out of the Dallas Fed. Their index falling to -35.8 from a prior -16.3. That is its lowest level since the pandemic. I think what's important here is to note the survey period. This data was collected between the 15th and the 23rd of April, so not only after Liberation Day, but also a fair while after Trump pulled a U-turn on tariffs as well, which I think could be very, very telling indeed. We also had the Treasury out of the United States giving us their financing estimates for the quarter ahead. They increased their April to June, so Q2 borrowing estimate to 514
We
billion. That's up from a prior 123 billion. Not exactly a rounding estimate, that, but a rounding error, I should say. But the bigger borrowing estimate is due to the Treasury's cash pile being smaller than they had previously forecast. Three other headlines for you this morning. The first is that Spain and Portugal were hit by, a very significant power blackout yesterday, which basically took the whole country's electricity offline. We have heard this morning that power in both Spain and Portugal has now been fully restored. I am, unlike half of the internet, not going to pretend to be an expert on power grids whatsoever,
boo.
so we will leave things there.
Oh, can I just
Another
say on
thing,
this, just on this, Brexit power was fine in Gibraltar. Just want to
oh yeah,
drop that in there.
all the retired cab drivers are all right.
And all the old life law traders, to be fair.
True. Another subject that I'm by no means an expert on is computers, but nevertheless, IBM, they plan to invest $150 billion in America over the next 5 years, and that includes $30 billion on research and development. And last but by no means least, on the political front, we have had through the night and through the morning results filtering in from the election in Canada. The unreliable boyfriend himself, Mark Carney, his Liberal Party, are on course to win the highest number of seats in that election. And in fact, the opposition leader has conceded. It does, though, look like Carney is going to have to govern via a minority
Yeah.
government. So the risks of political instability remain very, very elevated indeed in Canada. The other story that is notable is, well, firstly, for those who are unfamiliar, back in January, the Conservatives in Canada had a 30 odd point lead over the Liberals in pretty much every poll you looked at. Of course, since then, Trump has come into office and started really just attacking the sovereignty of Canada. As a result, the whole country has really rallied around, well, first Trudeau and now Carney, which is why we've seen the Liberals make this massive comeback. As if that wasn't bad enough for Pierre
Everyone loves a good
Poilievre, who
comeback
is
story.
oh God! As if that wasn't bad enough for Pierre Poilievre, who is the opposition
Oh, well
leader,
pronounced.
he is now on track to actually lose his seat in the Commons with 95% of the vote counted. He's about 3,000 votes behind the Liberal candidate in that riding. So, yeah, a very, very bad night indeed for the Conservative Party of Canada. And many people would actually say, and I'd probably make them right, that this is another election that Trump has really won effectively for the
Yeah.
Liberal Party.
Yeah, no, I make you right. I think the interesting thing here, and I did mention this, it actually might have been on WhatsApp with on the group that we're on, that there was only kind of one thing worse than Carney getting into power for Canada, and that's Carney getting into power with a minority. I think they are going to be in the wasteland, in the wilderness wasteland, whatever you want to call it, for the next 4 years or whatever it is. So, yeah, an interesting one. Sucks to be them. But Michael, thank you very much for that. Just a quick roundup from some overnight news headlines from Zach's extremely valuable overnight news roundup that we put out on Twitter, on Substack, etc. If you do want the best place to catch up with your overnight market news, do subscribe to that on Substack. It's in our pin tweet, etc., etc. So just starting off with some trade headlines. Pardon me. Trump is expected to soften auto tariffs by avoiding stacking duties and easing levies on foreign made parts used in US manufacturing. Amazon is pushing suppliers for steep discounts to protect margins under pressure from Trump's trade policies. China's ambassador to India denied that Beijing will dump cheap goods abroad, while the Commerce Ministry signals support for US company cooperation. China's foreign minister warned nations not to bow to US tariff threats. BRICS nations met yesterday to coordinate resistance to Trump's new trade tools. Not heard on anything on that. I'm sure the dollar demise people will be, their usual gobby self. Japan's ruling party warned Trump's tariffs could push Asia closer to China, and India will leverage its Boeing orders to seek trade concessions. In macro headlines, CEOs of Nvidia, SoftBank, Toyota, Hyundai, and others will visit the White House on Wednesday to promote US investment. So expect plenty of deals to be signed and nice glitzy headlines for Trump on the back of that on Wednesday. China's copper inventories are nearing depletion, creating a historic tightening shock. Copper premiums surge as buyers scramble to fill inventory. The yuan rose to a month high, 1 month high as exporters converted dollars, and Beijing reaffirmed currency stability. China's travel bookings for the May Day holiday are at post-COVID highs, while domestic travel optimism grows and domestic optimism in general grows. Japan's four largest life insurers plan to cut or hold flat JGB exposure. That's one for the bond market there. Obviously, Japanese lifers are huge players, not just in JGBs, but in bonds pretty much globally. I know they've always been big buyers of gilts, etc. in the past. Spain and Portugal face major transport disruptions after large-scale blackout, as we heard earlier on. Again, Gibraltar was fine. ECB, Kazakhs sees gradual rate cuts ahead. Eurozone regulators consider easing rules for smaller lenders. What could possibly go wrong there? UK food inflation hit an 11-month high. Ministers are pressuring pension funds to boost UK investments. Um, The RBA noted a spike in FX volatility after US tariff threats. No shit, which has since calmed. Thank you for that
Jesus.
insight. New Zealand is slashing its 2025 budget spending amid weakening domestic growth. They've had a bit of a turnaround. I do feel for New Zealand because obviously they handled COVID very poorly. They then came out, and very recently, I was big myself was saying that they seem to be the antipode worth watching, and all of a sudden they've run into a brick wall. So sucks to be them. Turkish banks are locking in long dated syndicated loans, betting on improving inflation and stabilizing markets. In geopolitics, Russia hopes for better weather will support its stalled spring offensive. It appears that ceasefires, although plenty of headlines, still seems to be a long way off. In terms of equities and corporate headlines, Microsoft and OpenAI's partnership is fraying over compute resources and model access. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. The S&P no longer, this is the rating agency rather than the index. The S&P no longer considers cutting Boeing to junk, citing its 24 billion with a B cash buffer. Wall Street sold the final 1.2 billion debt slug from Musk's Twitter buyout. Cadence Design Systems raised its outlook but warned on China exposure. American Airlines ended its partnership talks with JetBlue. I also believe they're trying to now sue JetBlue, maybe for something to do with
Oh,
that. I'm not
God.
sure. Again, this sounds like one of these things I'll be rattling on for years. Whether or not it gets off the ground, I don't know.
Oh,
MasterCard will
dear.
offer. Oh, you can shut up. MasterCard will offer merchant settlement in stablecoins amid growing regulatory clarity. This has the well, I think this is quite a huge kind of move for stablecoins. I'm sure Cam will talk about this more later on in the crypto blast, but being able to trade your stablecoins directly from via Mastercard is a massive game changer, in my opinion. A seismic shift in the market. Adidas refrained from raising guidance, citing US tariff concerns. Deutsche Bank posted its best pre-tax profit in 14 years, whereas Lufthansa, narrowed Q1 losses. Rheinmetall, the German defense name, beat Q1 forecast and reaffirmed guidance on defense strength. They've performed exceptionally well this morning. HSBC announced a $3 billion buyback despite a drop in Q1 net profit. BP reduced its buyback to 750 million amid lower oil prices and rising debt. Porsche cut its 2025 guidance due to China weakness, supply costs, and tariffs. Alibaba launched its upgraded AI model called Quen 3 with hybrid reasoning. No fucking clue what that means, but
Good.
good for them. Yeah. Chinese EV makers are scaling back European expansion plans due to tariffs. Evergrande, cool, remember them?
Oh,
Their
yeah.
chairman will not disclose asset details, complicating liquidation. That's still rattling on then. Um, Sony is considering spinning off its semiconductor unit. And finally, from me, oh no, second from final, so penultimate. Samsung is ramping up development of its 3D DRAM to complete with Hynix in China. And finally, from me, because it's related to LNG. Woodside is in talks with multiple parties for its $17.5 billion Louisiana LNG project, which obviously, as we know, LNG could be a hot commodity going forward. And that's it from me. Back to you in the studio.
Good stuff. Thank you, Ryan. In terms
Thank you.
of
You're very welcome.
Good. In terms of today, then, a very quiet European session ahead with no notable data releases on the docket. A few bits and bobs out of the States this afternoon, though, both at 3 o'clock. We have the latest job openings data, the JOLTS figures for March. Openings expected at 7.498 million, down for a prior 7.568 million. Of course, this is pre Liberation Day data, so take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Also at 3 o'clock, we have the latest consumer confidence figures from the Conference Board. Their index expected at 88, down for a prior 92.9. In terms of other things to keep an eye on today, a few central bank speakers, including the ECB's Holtzman, BOE's Ramsden, and SMB's Martin. Of course, the FOMC are in their pre-meeting blackout period until next Wednesday's
Yes.
press conference. We are also due to hear from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He is speaking at 1:30 at the White House press briefing. And then at 7 o'clock this evening, London time, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is being let out of the cupboard that he's been locked in since Trump pulled a U-turn on tariffs, and is being allowed to speak on
So, right.
CNBC.
So on this, right, what's the thinking? Because getting those two speaking, are we thinking that there's going to be dropping some kind of bullish news, or what's the plan? Because it seems like they're only going to, the fact that they've kind of
Yeah.
communicated this ahead of time makes me think that there's going to be something said or something dropping. Whether like, it might be bollocks what they say, but I think it could be market moving.
Well, yeah, I would agree. I think it's definitely something worth considering. It's odd that you would communicate those two appearances a day in advance. The one thing I would say, though, is knowing Trump as we do, if a deal's been done, he's going to want to announce it. He's not going to leave it to Lutnick and Besant to do that for him. He's going to want to go and bathe in the glory himself. But nevertheless, yeah, I think you're right. It could well be a market moving or two market moving announcements. In terms of other things to keep an eye on today, busy earnings slate before the market open. We hear from PayPal, UPS, JetBlue, Coca-Cola, Pfizer, and Spotify. We'll see whether their earnings can hit the spot later on. And after the market close, we have reports from the likes of Visa, Starbucks, and also Snap, who I wouldn't normally mention because they're not in any of the benchmark indices, but options imply a move of plus or minus 18.9%
Oof.
in the stock in the after hours session. So do just bear that one in mind. And the biggest event of the day, of course, comes in 11 hours' time at the Emirates, where Arsenal will hopefully be beating PSG in the Champions League
Come
semi
on,
final.
you Gunners!
That's it from me.
That's basically just for Liam, well, and us, because we're both Arsenal fans, and Zach's an Arsenal fan as well. Oh, what a
He
nice
is.
little group we
He
make.
is. I'm
Cool.
surprised.
Awesome.
Actually, I'm surprised Zach isn't in Japan at the minute. It's Golden Week there, full week of public holidays. It's like
Oh,
Judith
that's a bit of
Chalmers'
him.
paradise.
That is a bit of him. Michael, thank you so much as always for being your wonderful self. Listeners, thank you as always. Just a reminder to anyone in London or the UK based that can get down to London, we are having our non-farm pints on Friday. After, well, I say after non-farm payroll. We all know me. I can't remember the last non-farm payroll I was around for. I'll be in the pub. It's due to be a great day, and we're drinking on the river as well. So do come down if you can. But yeah, apart from that, take care if you are training today. Keep it tight, stay safe, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Goodbye.
See you later.